Dr. Martinez began the debate with a straightforward question: how can we better engage young Americans in the political process? Congresswoman Crockett was the first to answer. Her tone was calm, measured, and professional. She discussed voter registration initiatives, civic education, and the value of true representation. Her statements were favorably received, and for a minute, the mood was upbeat. Then it was Barron's time. "Thank you, Dr. Martinez," Barron said, his voice firm yet full of confidence. "Congresswoman Crockett brings forward some interesting points. But I have to wonder if she's the ideal person to lead America's kids." A murmur sounded around the room. This was hardly the respectful, erudite debate they had anticipated. His words had a harsher edge. "Congresswoman Crockett represents everything wrong with modern politics," she said. "She is more concerned with viral moments and social media clout than actual governing. Her committee performances are more theatrical than substantive." Students immediately reached for their phones, anticipating a viral event emerging live. Crockett lifted an eyebrow but maintained her poise. Barron pressed on. "Her voting record demonstrates a pattern of partisan extremism that alienates moderate Americans. How can someone be so divisive and profess to represent unity?" Crockett leaned forward, his voice calm yet forceful. "Mr. Trump, I admire your passionate opinion. But before you criticize my qualifications for government, perhaps you should look into your own family's political history." The atmosphere in the room became increasingly tense. Barron's jaw tightened slightly, the first fracture in his otherwise flawless veneer. "Congresswoman, my family's record speaks for itself. We've accomplished something beyond just performing for cameras." Crockett raised his voice slightly. "Have you accomplished anything? Like the January 6th insurrection? Like attempting to overthrow a valid election? Like the multiple indictments?" That was when everything changed. Barron stood tall at 6 feet 8 inches, his voice falling to a menacing tone that reminded everyone of whose son he was. "Congresswoman Crockett, let me be very clear. Your grandstanding might play well on Twitter, but it doesn't change the fact that you are fundamentally unfit to hold office, let alone guide America's youth. Your radical agenda, your inflammatory rhetoric, your complete disregard for constitutional principles, all of it makes you a danger to our democracy." The room exploded, with gasps echoing, phones flashing, and social media erupting in real time. What happened following this showdown? What was the recording that Congresswoman Crockett revealed? How did Barron Trump react when confronted with undeniable evidence? The word unfit rang out like a thunderclap, and the entire Georgetown debate hall seemed to freeze for a moment. Students gasped, and the moderator, Dr. Sarah Martinez, blinked in disbelief, her professional composure wavering slightly. What had begun as a typical academic debate had quickly turned into a fierce character attack. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett sat calmly for a long beat, her face unreadable. Then, with intentional composure, she reached into her purse and brought out her phone. Every eye in the room was fixated on her, waiting to see what she would divulge. The air was thick with expectancy. "Mr. Trump," she said slowly, her voice now quiet but carrying an unmistakable edge, "before we continue this conversation about who is unfit for what, I believe this audience needs to hear something." She raised her phone, holding it up for everyone to see. Her finger hovered over the screen, poised above the play button. "This is a recording from 3 weeks ago. It's very relevant to our discussion about fitness for political engagement." Barron's confident look, which had carried him so far, wavered for the first time as his eyes narrowed and searched her face. "What are you doing?" he said, his voice losing some of its authority and cracking slightly. Crockett did not flinch as she turned her gaze to the cameras streaming the debate live. "I'm about to play a recording that reveals exactly what kind of political engagement you've been involved in behind closed doors," she stated firmly. Then she pressed play. Everyone recognized the tone, tempo, and distinct inflections of Barron Trump's voice, which resonated clearly through the hall speakers. "Look, I don't actually believe half the stuff I say in these debates," he admitted with a smile. "It's all about positioning for the future. These Georgetown kids eat up the constitutional law stuff, but it's just theater. Dad taught me, you say whatever gets you power, then you do whatever you want with it." A softer, less familiar voice said, "But what about your actual positions? What do you really believe?" Barron's voice became more reserved. "Honestly, I think Dad went too far with a lot of things. The election fraud claims. January 6th, that was a disaster. But I can't say that publicly. The base would destroy me. So I play the part, build my brand, and eventually pivot to something more moderate when the time is right." The shocked audience's anxious breathing and the slight rustling of papers were the only sounds in the room as they realized what they had just heard. The recording continues. And these people I debate with, like this Crockett woman, she's actually pretty smart. Her positions aren't that radical if you really examine them. But calling her unfit and dangerous? That plays well with our crowd. It's all about optics. The second speaker probed further. So you don't really believe what you're saying about her? Barron's demeanor changed. Of course not. She's probably more qualified than half the Republicans in Congress. But admitting that doesn't help me build my political future. You have to understand, politics isn't about truth. It's about narrative. And the Trump narrative requires enemies. The final words were the most damaging. The funny thing is, I agree with Crockett on a lot of issues: climate change, criminal justice reform, even some of her economic policies. But I'll stand up there and call her a radical extremist because that's what my audience wants to hear. That's how you build a following in today's politics. You tell people what they want to hear, not what's actually true. The recording ended. A heavy quiet fell over the room, as if a vast weight had settled on everyone's shoulders. Students stared in bewilderment, and the cameras continued to roll, catching every astonished face. For the first time since stepping onto the Georgetown stage, Barron Trump appeared really rattled. His cheeks paled, and the confident posture he had held so solidly now shattered. He stood still, all 6'8" of him suddenly appearing much smaller, much younger, like a teenager caught in a lie. "That recording," he finally said, his voice quivering in surprise, "is from a conversation you had 3 weeks ago with a Georgetown journalism student." Crockett offered a cool nod. "Yes. A student who was working on a profile about you. A student who believed the public has the right to know who you really are behind the political theater." She rose from her seat, and the physical distance between them dissolved. Her presence seemed to dominate the room, overwhelming the young guy in front of her. "Mr. Trump," she began in a voice that was calm but raspy, "you just called me unfit for office. You questioned my qualifications, my integrity, my ability to guide young Americans. But this recording shows that you don't even believe your own attacks." She stopped, allowing her words to hang thick in the tense air. "You admit I'm qualified. You admit you agree with my positions. You admit calling me dangerous is just theater for your political brand." The audience was fascinated. Some students took out their phones to record, while others remained motionless, overwhelmed by the grandeur of the revelation. "Let me ask you this," Crockett said with an angry tone. "Who is really unfit here? Is it the congresswoman who has been fighting for her constituents, working on legislation, and speaking her truth? Or is it the young man who admits to lying about his positions, manipulating his audience, and building his entire political persona on deception?" Barron opened his mouth to answer, but no words emerged. "You speak of constitutional principles, Mr. Trump," Crockett kept saying, "but the foundation of our democracy is honest discourse. It's representatives who believe in what they fight for. It's leaders who don't see politics as theater, and voters as an audience to be manipulated." The Georgetown students, who had been charmed by Barron's knowledge and grace all year, now viewed him in a different, harsher light. Shock and despair echoed through the gathering like a wave. "That's not, I didn't mean," Barron eventually said, his customary eloquence gone. "You didn't mean for people to hear your real thoughts?" Crockett pressed him, his gaze fixed on his. "You didn't mean for your constituents, because that's what these students are, your future constituents, to know you see them as marks to be conned, not citizens to be served?" Her attention turned to the live broadcast cameras. "This is exactly what's wrong with American politics. We have young people entering the arena who see public service as performance art, who think leadership is about saying whatever gets you power regardless of truth or consequence." Returning to Barron, she went on, "You want to talk about unfitness? Let's talk about a political candidate who admits to lying to voters, who builds their brand on manufactured outrage, and who sees democracy as a game to be won rather than a trust to be honored." The room erupted, but not with polite applause. It was genuine, continuous, and powerful, a reaction from students who believed they had just witnessed history. For the first time in his 18-year career, Barron Trump was thoroughly beaten. As the discussion came to an end, the Georgetown auditorium was brimming with energy. Students gathered in groups, animatedly debating what they just witnessed, and phones were already filming every expression: Barron's disbelief, Crockett's victory. Dr. Martinez, the moderator, fought to take control of the room, but the formal end of the debate had turned into an unplanned press frenzy, with local reporters shouting questions from all sides. Barron, still visibly upset, rapidly gathered his things. The confident young man who had entered the hall was gone. In his place stood someone overwhelmed, weak, and considerably younger than 18. "No questions," he whispered, barely audible, as his Georgetown security detail hastily directed him out a side exit. Over a young guy who had commanded every room he'd entered over the previous year, This abrupt withdrawal was a shocking fall from grace to watch. The hall gradually emptied, but the impact of what happened lingered. The debate was more than just a contest of ideas. It was a revealing window into the messy, raw truths of modern American politics. The polished veneer had cracked, revealing how power, truth, and ambition collide in dangerous, unpredictable ways. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett had risen as a symbol of unwavering honesty and brave truth-telling, while Barron Trump's political image, which he had worked so hard to develop, appeared to be shattered in front of his peers. The debate over who was actually fit for political leadership didn't end here. It had only just begun. The hashtag BarronExpose began trending on Twitter within minutes of the debate's conclusion and quickly rose to the top spot within 2 hours. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett played the recording and zoomed in on Barron's face as his own words contradicted everything he had just said. The video was shared over 100,000 times in the first hour alone. On conservative Twitter, mayhem erupted. Many of Barron's fans felt betrayed and puzzled. Accounts like Barron_Trump_2044, which had served as hubs for his supporters, were overwhelmed with critical messages. How can you build a political movement on lies? One tweet read, "The recording affects everything. This kid isn't the future of conservatism, he represents everything wrong with politics," complained another. "Disappointed does not begin to describe it. We believed Barron was different. Turns out, he's just another political opportunist," read other remarks. Meanwhile, lefty Twitter was abuzz with excitement over Crockett's superb takedown. Jasmine Crockett just delivered the most devastating political exposure I've ever seen, according to one user. That recording was great timing. Barron said she was unsuitable, and she demonstrated he was the one who is unfit. This is how you deal with a bully, praised another. How did she remain cool as he melted down? That's genuine political savvy right there. By the following morning, every major news network had covered the incident. The clip was shown on loop across cable news channels, with analysts scrutinizing each frame by frame. CNN's morning show used the headline "Georgetown Debate Shocker. Recording exposes Barron Trump's private views." Their political expert called it a stunning fall from grace for someone many saw as the future of Trump's political dynasty. The tale was widely debated, with viewers drawn to the raw, unfiltered look beneath the polished political mask. Fox News placed themselves in an unpleasant situation. Known for their staunch support of the Trump family, their coverage was unusually quiet, without the normal fierce language. The network appeared divided between trying to protect Barron without upsetting their core viewers and unable to ignore the gravity of the disclosures. In contrast to their customary robust arguments, Fox's quiet said loudly. In contrast, MSNBC went all in on the story. Several parts discussed the recording's consequences. This recording reveals the cynical calculation behind much of modern political rhetoric, according to one host. Here is a young man confessing that he does not trust his own positions. He's simply saying what he believes will help him build his brand on campus, remarked another. The aftermath on Georgetown's campus was fast and terrible. Students who had attended Barron's Young Republicans sessions began to doubt everything they believed. In just 1 week, the club's membership dropped by 60%. "I felt betrayed," said Sarah Chun, a sophomore and one of Barron's biggest fans. "His arguments had convinced me to rethink some of my political views, but now I find out he didn't even believe what he was saying." Professor Michael Roberts, who taught Barron's constitutional law class, was deeply disappointed. "Academic integrity is fundamental to everything we do here," he stated earnestly. The idea that a student would engage in public discourse, while privately admitting to manipulation and deception, is deeply troubling. Georgetown's administration finds itself in a precarious predicament. While Barron's political beliefs were protected by free expression, the tape raised serious concerns about academic honesty and personal integrity. The university quietly revised norms governing political conduct and public representation. 3 days after the debate, Barron Trump issued a carefully worded statement through his lawyer. Congresswoman Crockett's recording of a private conversation was taken out of context and without my knowledge or consent. My political views are serious, and I stand by my criticism of Congresswoman Crockett's record. This attack on my character is exactly the type of political theater I've been trying to reform. Regardless of how polished the statement appeared, the harm had already been done. Social media users quickly pointed out the obvious irony. Barron lamented political theater while acknowledging that his own beliefs were part of a deliberate show. In interviews, Jasmine Crockett utilized the opportunity to emphasize broader issues of political integrity. On CNN, she stated, "This is not about destroying a young man. It's about exposing the sleazy manipulation that all too often passes as political debate. Voters desire leaders that truly believe in what they are fighting for. Her office claimed a 400% spike in donations the week after the discussion. Her social media following has grown by over 200,000 new followers. Democratic leaders began to hail her as a rising talent with national potential. Political commentators began to examine what the incident meant for American politics. The recording revealed something many people assumed but rarely saw confirmed. Certain political individuals saw their positions as strategic tools rather than moral stands. This is the danger of treating politics like a reality show, stated Dr. Jennifer Walsh, a political scientist at American University. When young people see political leadership as performance art, it undermines the entire democratic process. Conservative commentators struggled with the aftermath. Many people had invested considerably in the idea that Barron represented a more intellectual, principled version of Trump politics. The recording broke the illusion totally. Perhaps most tellingly, the Trump family's reaction was rather quiet. Donald Trump, who frequently defends his family on social media, sent a brief message: "Barron is young and learning. The fake news media loves to attack my family." The lack of a strong rebuttal demonstrated how damaging the recording was, even within Trump circles. 6 months later, the debate's consequences were still felt in political circles. Barron Trump had virtually disappeared from mainstream political debate. His intended spring semester course on conservative political theory was quietly withdrawn due to low registration. Georgetown classmates stated that he had become increasingly withdrawn. He stopped dominating political conversations in class. The confident young guy who had appeared destined for political stardom was now quietly questioning his whole attitude to public life. The clash between Barron Trump and Jasmine Crockett became more than just a viral scene. It was also a case study in political authenticity. It underlined the widening gap between image and reality in American politics, as well as the expensive cost of viewing leadership as a performance. Many saw it as a cautionary tale. The truth, when revealed, had the power to down even the most meticulously created political empires. The Georgetown debate and its aftermath highlighted how fast public image changes when private convictions contradict public positions. More importantly, it demonstrated the value of preparation and principle in political speech. Jasmine Crockett's win was not solely due to her possession of harmful material, it was also due to her clever use of the information to make a bigger point about political honesty. For young Americans watching the conflict unfold live, the moment taught a clear lesson: true leadership necessitates genuine belief in what you are fighting for. Voters, including young voters, can tell the difference between performance and principle, and in the end, authenticity triumphs. In the weeks following the discussion, the Georgetown journalism student who made the recording finally came forward. Jamie Martinez, who had no relation to the debate's moderator, was a senior working on a profile of political dynasties in American institutions. "I wasn't trying to trap him," Martinez stated in an interview with the Georgetown Voice. "I was just asking follow-up questions about his ideas, and he began to be very open about the differences between what he believed privately and what he said publicly. I felt that students had the right to know who they were truly supporting." The ethical issues surrounding the recording triggered intense disputes about journalism, privacy, and public responsibility. However, most agreed on one point: once Barron Trump opted to question Crockett's fitness for office, his own fitness became open to public scrutiny. Crockett's brilliant handling of the confrontation lifted her to new heights in Democratic politics. Within a year, she was regularly discussed as a future Senate contender, and her committee assignments were changed to reflect her growing power. Her debate performance became obligatory watching in political communication schools around the country. The way she remained calm in the face of an assault, flawlessly prepared her counterpunch, and used the opportunity to make wider arguments about political integrity became a textbook example of successful political battle. 2 years later, in a rare interview, Barron Trump spoke about the incident. "It was a wake-up call about the difference between politics as performance and politics as service," he gently explained. "I learned that if you're going to enter public life, you better make sure your private beliefs align with your public positions, because eventually the truth comes out." It was unclear if this represented true growth or a deliberate political posture. For Jasmine Crockett, the win was complete. She revealed political cynicism, defended her own integrity, and demonstrated how to deal with political bullies. The recording that changed everything did more than wreck one young man's political ambitions. It reminded America of what true political leadership looks like. This remarkable confrontation demonstrated how rapidly the tables can change in politics when preparation meets chance. It emphasized the necessity of holding officials accountable not only for their public statements, but also for their true beliefs behind closed doors. In an era dominated by political theater, genuine accountability moments like this are strong reminders of what democracy is meant to be: a system based on trust, honesty, and sincere representation. Baron Trump's fall from grace was rapid and public, but the debate's long-term significance extends beyond any single man. It rekindled debate on the ethics of political performance and the need for leaders who embody principle rather than merely political calculation. As political discourse evolves, the Georgetown encounter remains a watershed moment, demonstrating that truth and preparation may change the course of history. If this tale impacted you, if it made you consider what true leadership should entail, I urge you to subscribe and join a community that values truth, courage, and responsibility. Together, we can continue to observe, challenge, and demand politics that respects the people it serves. Don't miss what comes next. The future of our democracy depends on voices like yours. Subscribe today and be a part of the change.